Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 6. If you're studying up for the SC300 exam, you've landed in the exact right place. We are jumping straight into the core of hybrid identity fundamentals today, so let's just get to it. So here's the big question. How do you actually connect your local legacy servers up to the cloud without totally wrecking seamless access? This is literally the foundational challenge almost every modern enterprise runs into when they're trying to bridge traditional on-premises Active Directory with Microsoft Entra ID. I mean, we all want that massive cloud scale, right? But just picking up and moving an entire local infrastructure overnight? Yeah, that's just not happening. Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll hit the Hybrid Identity Challenge. Then, we'll meet Azure AD Connect. After that, we'll talk about choosing your authentication methods. Then, a step-by-step configuration walkthrough. And finally, we'll wrap up with our SC300 exam focus. All right, part 1, the Hybrid Identity Challenge. So what exactly is a hybrid Azure AD Join device? Well, by definition, it's essentially a device living in two worlds at the exact same time. It stays a member of your good old on-premises domain, meaning it's still governed by your traditional group policies. But at the same time, it's actually registered to your Azure AD tenant. And this dual state setup, it's a real game changer because it lets your users bounce between cloud and local resources without any friction at all. And the real-world benefits here are absolutely massive for an enterprise. We're talking single sign-on straight to your Azure SaaS apps. You get enterprise-compliant roaming without needing anyone's personal Microsoft account. It unlocks Windows Hello security, and it lets you enforce really strict compliance-based access restrictions. And the best part? You get all of this while keeping that seamless access to your local network resources. Best of both worlds, really. Moving right along to part 2, meet Azure AD Connect. Now, to actually bridge these two worlds, you need an engine. Think of it like a massive funnel. When you're dealing with really complex enterprise architectures, the ones with multiple fragmented Active Directory forests, Azure AD Connect synchronization services acts as that funnel. It scoops up all those separate on-premises identities and neatly verges them into one single unified Azure AD tenant. The result is just one synchronized object securely managed up in the cloud. When setting this up, you basically have two main choices. Standard Azure AD Connect is your heavy lifter. It syncs users, groups, and, crucially, devices. On the flip side, we have Azure AD Connect Cloud Sync. This one uses lightweight on-prem agents and actually drives the synchronization right from the cloud. Now, listen up because this is a super common architectural mistake. Do not deploy Cloud Sync if you heavily rely on syncing device identities. Why? Because right now, Cloud Sync just doesn't natively support device sync, so definitely plan accordingly. All right, part 3, choosing authentication methods. Okay, so your users are synced, but how do they actually log in? Well, you've got a rule of 3 here. First up is password hash synchronization, or PHS. This is definitely the simplest deployment, with 0 on-prem agents required. Next is pass-through authentication, or PTA. Now, PTA is fantastic if you need to honor really strict on-prem policies, like specific logon hours, but keep in mind, it doesn't have native smart card support. And finally, we've got federation. This is a much heavier lift for an enterprise because it requires ADFS and dedicated SSL certificates. Let's zoom in on password hash sync for a second. The really cool thing here is that the authentication paths are actually totally separate. When a user authenticates locally, they're talking to the Active Directory domain. But when they authenticate to the cloud, they're talking directly to the Azure AD tenant. Azure AD Connect just quietly passes that password hash up to the cloud ahead of time. So your local AD doesn't even participate in the actual cloud login moment. This makes it incredibly fast and super resilient if you ever have a local outage. And honestly, Microsoft's golden rule on this is super straightforward. Use password hash synchronization. Unless you absolutely have to enforce on-premises policies at the exact millisecond someone signs in, or you specifically need certificate-based auth, PHS is 100% the way to go. Oh, and pro tip, even if you do end up choosing PTA or federation, always enable PHS as a backup. Why? Because Azure AD Identity Protection actually uses those hashes to detect leaked credentials against known dark web breaches. It is literally a massive zero-effort security win. Which brings us to part 4, step-by-step configuration. So when you're going through the setup wizard, it generally breaks down into 3 high-level phases. First, you connect to Azure AD using an account that has Global Administrator or Hybrid Identity Administrator privileges. Second, you configure a service account that can securely query your on-premises Active Directory. And third, you just finalize your chosen sign-on method. During that first phase, you'll authenticate to Azure AD. Now, please watch out for a critical mistake here. Do not use an on-premises synced account for this. Microsoft strongly recommends using a cloud-only global administrator account. That way, if your local environment goes completely down, you aren't permanently locked out of the cloud. After you connect, you just select your sign-in method, something like pass-through authentication, and you can easily check a box to seamlessly enable single sign-on for your corporate desktop users. Next up, the wizard is going to ask you for domain admin credentials to configure that service account. I know, handing over domain admin credentials usually sets off alarm bells, but don't panic. The system literally only uses these credentials for a brief moment to create a Group Managed Service Account, or GMSA, locally. It's that GMSA that handles the ongoing sync. Once it's set up, it's actually highly recommended that you go back and change the password or just disable that domain admin account altogether. Now, if you're looking inside the Azure portal's Cloud Sync interface, this is where you manage your scope, your password hashes, and some really vital safety guardrails. One thing you absolutely want to notice is the accidental delete threshold. It's set to 500 by default. From a troubleshooting and disaster recovery perspective, this thing is a total lifesaver. If a rogue script suddenly tries to delete more than 500 objects all at once, this threshold pauses the synchronization and alerts you, totally preventing a complete cloud directory annihilation. On the other hand, if your enterprise absolutely requires federation, the barrier to entry is quite a bit higher. You're going to have to deploy Windows Server 2012 R2 or later for both your federation servers and web application proxy servers. Plus, you need dedicated SSL certificates that match your federation service name. It definitely introduces a lot more troubleshooting overhead compared to something straightforward like PHS. All right, let's bring it home with Part 5, SC300 Exam Focus. If you're going after the Microsoft Identity and Access Administrator certification, mastering identity governance is absolutely key. The SC300 exam is going to test you on your ability to set these tools up, sure, but more importantly, it tests your grasp of the nuanced limitations between all of them. So, grab a pen because here are your rapid-fire exam tips. First up, sync times. Disabling a local user takes up to 30 minutes to reflect in Azure AD if you're using Standard Connect, but it only takes 2 minutes with Cloud Sync. Huge difference. Second, PTA cannot natively support signing into Azure AD Join devices with expired passwords. Keep that in mind. Third, Azure AD Connect Health is absolutely your go-to monitoring tool. And finally, if a question asks about role permissions to create or update objects, zero in on the string that starts with Microsoft.directory/. So, what do you think? Is your infrastructure actually ready to seamlessly bridge that on-premises and cloud divide? By mastering Hybrid Azure AD Join, knowing your auth methods inside and out, and nailing these configurations, you are totally ready to secure the enterprise and completely crush the SC300. For your practical lab challenge today, I want you to boot up a dev tenant and actually try setting up Cloud Sync with a dummy Active Directory. Get your hands dirty, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.